My name is Peter Young, and I'm a Yale class of 1974 from Branford College, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's event. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the 12th in this series of career panels on careers after Yale. And today's profession is the investment profession. This series that we've done thus far really focuses on trying to provide students and young alumni with candid, helpful views on different professions via panels of successful practitioners in each field. And the overall concept has really been to pick those professions not only where Yaleys are interested, but also where there are myths and misconceptions about what is happening, who's best for the profession, and what it's like once you get there. And to try to cut through those myths and misconceptions. I was speaking with the panelists earlier, and if you watch TV, you think that that forensic scientists solve every crime, that lawyers win cases every 30 minutes. And the reality is quite different in both a positive and a negative sense. So why is there a need for an event like this? And to be honest, as smart and as resourceful as Yale students and graduates are, it's really quite hard to get candid and credible information about professions. After all, it's not the job of a recruiter, for example, to tell you both the good and the bad about what it's like to be a consultant or an investment banker. Now, we can't help you figure yourself out, and obviously that's an important part of the question, which is understanding yourself. But we do hope that this series of webinars will help Yale students and alumni get candid, credible views so that you can make intelligent choices about your careers. For the first 11 of these Yale career panels, we've had 1,392 students and alumni attend. And since we do record this event and then make it available online, we've had 980 who have watched the archived video recordings of the last 8 events. The first 3 we didn't record, so they're not available. Over the last 2 years, we've featured legal twice, investment banking twice, medical twice, entrepreneurism, education, nonprofits, drama and film, and consulting. So we try to cover those professions that a lot of students are interested in. The one surprising thing to me is someone that we thought would have a relatively sparse attendance, like education. We had very large numbers of people attending, so it's hard to tell. This event is somewhat unique in that we have 3 simultaneous venues. We have the meeting room here at Freshfields, here in New York City. We have room 211 in Lindsay Chittenden at Yale, and we can see them connected there by video conference. And then we have a streaming video, a very large number of people who are participating via streaming video and audio. Now, in this case, we happen to have all the panelists here in New York, but we've had every possible combination. We've had all the panelists in New Haven, we've had half the panelists in New Haven, half here, and so forth. So it all depends upon the panelists and where they reside. But this combination really allows the maximum number of alumni and students to participate. And I think we actually had one where we had a student who was in the Yale in China program dial in from Shanghai at 4:30 in the morning. So that's dedication. For this particular panel, we had 227 register for this event. 60 in New York, 30 at Yale, and 137 by streaming video. And Denise Burns, who I think is there. Is Denise there at Yale? There we go, all right. Denise Burns, who is an Associate Director of Yale Undergraduate Career Services, she's going to be quarterbacking the Yale location and will coordinate questions from that location. Before I introduce the speakers, though, I'd like to just thank a number of people and organizations who work together to help organize and promote these career panels. I want to thank Elaine Mazzarella and Denise Burns of Yale Undergraduate Career Services, Steve Bloom, Barbara Burt, and Elizabeth Rocher of AYA, the student and alumni of Yale's organization, STAY, Julia Zupko of the Yale SOM, Trish Takemoto from the Association of Asian American Alumni, Savina Dahl of the Asian American Cultural Center, Mai Lu of the Yale Alumni Association in New York, and Rachel Tobin of the Junior Class Council. So I also want to thank the staff of my firm, Young Partners, in particular Tom Melvin, who's here, who've been working very hard on this event. But I also want to give special thanks to Freshfields, who has graciously provided the use of this meeting room and their video conference equipment. Those of you who don't know, Freshfields is a global law firm with 2,000 lawyers worldwide and 28 offices in 18 countries. And according to Tim Harkness, who is a partner at Freshfields, who arranged for the use of this meeting, who, of course, you won't be surprised, is a graduate of Yale, is very pleased to welcome the Yale students and alumni to this event. So for today's event, I would like to first introduce the panelists and guide the panelists through the 5 topics. But I also would like each of our panelists to briefly talk about how they got into the profession. And I happen to know their background, so not all of them went straight to what they're doing now, but also to talk about the entry points that one has going into the profession, because it's different. Whether if it's consulting or investment banking and so forth, it can be different as far as how you can intersect your career with that profession. I'm not going to. I do want to remind that the people who are participating in my streaming video, obviously we have you muted so that we won't have interference from the phone. But if you have questions, please email them to yalecareerpanelists@gmail.com. We're going to be monitoring your emails from this iPad, and we'll be mixing your questions in with questions from the Yale students who are in New Haven and the people who are participating here. We do expect to end at 5:30, but the panelists here have agreed to stay for another 30 minutes to meet with those of you who are in New York and answer questions. I'm not going to go through the bios of the 3 panelists because you saw them in the invitation that you responded to. But to my left, we have Greg Ho, who's President and Chief Operating Officer of Spring Mountain Capital. He was a graduate of Yale graduate and Columbia Law School. To my right, we have Reuben Jeffrey, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Rockefeller & Co., fondly called Rock & Co., right? Who graduated from Yale and has a Stanford JD and MBA. And then David Thomas, who is a managing partner of Cord Square, a well-known private equity firm, but who also has a nice affiliation with Yale, and that he's on the advisory council of the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute that I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with. So I'll serve as a moderator, but perhaps we can start by maybe each of you just commenting about your path to where you are today, but also, you know, from the perspective of both undergraduates and graduates and so forth, you know, how one intersects with your profession from a career point of view. David?
So Cord Square is a private equity firm. Just to go background on that, because I think you need to put what we do in perspective in terms of answering some of these other questions. We're focused on North America. We manage about $7 billion of assets at this point in time. The investing fund is about $3 billion. We focus on areas such as healthcare, tech and telecom, industrials, and business services. And we've been in those areas pretty much over the last 30 years. The size of transactions that we do, this is, you know, buying control of companies, obviously, will range in terms of total purchase prices from $250 million up to $1 billion, roughly. The focus is that we buy the businesses, we acquire control, we serve on the board, we put business plans together in terms of increasing the value of that business over time. Ultimately, we sell that business either to another private equity firm or a strategic buyer, or we take the company public. It depends on what the game plan is. We're total of about 50 people. We have one office location here in New York. That's one model. That's the way we operate, but there are obviously very many models in the private equity area. I'll try to touch on that as we go through some of these other questions. The way I got into the business was I was working at Citibank in a pretty obscure little area, lending into what were called then bootstrap acquisitions. This was late 70s. I remember a young upstart firm, Culver, Kravis and Roberts, was just doing a $75 million deal. That was very big at the time. But what happened was that I had basically gained some experience in terms of how to put those deals together. The area that I was in ultimately became known as the Leveraged Finance Group, but it took about 10, maybe 12 years before it was actually called that. What happened was that in our venture business, there was a Citigroup Venture Capital Group, and there was some turnover at the top of that, and there was an opening, and they brought me in with the idea that we would refocus the efforts of that group more towards buyouts and away from venture, because we felt we could scale the buyouts more, and this would have more of an impact or be able to move the needle on Citigroup bottom line. So that's really how I got into business. It was 1980, and it was really just the beginnings of what became known as the private equity industry. That's really how
Is everything?
you got it.
Yeah, I'm Reuben Jeffrey, and thank you all for your interest in the investment management business. I think, like David, I'll start with a little bit of who Rockefeller & Co. is. White. That's the other side of it. We're here to take your money and make it grow so you can make grants sometime. So there's a lack of clarity sometime in the marketplace. If you went on our website, you'd see we have about $40 billion plus or minus of assets under advisement. That covers three basic activities. One is really sort of data processing activity, outsourcing our reporting platform. That's probably about a third. And then the other 2/3 are divided roughly evenly between assets with respect to which we advise. And assets that I've been at Rockefeller all about 4 years was, I would largely serendipitous in many respects. I came out of government, and like a lot of people who emerge from government or any job where they've been for a while and totally immersed, you sort of look up and you say, oh no, now what do I do when I grow up? Now, all that said, there was a search going on and I sort of got into the process, but going back to my days at Yale, which were a long time ago, but I do remember a few things. Actually, I was kind of interested in business and finance, and there was an accounting course I took, which actually was a great course and held me in good stead subsequently. My first job out of college was as a junior trainee and analyst at one of the bank training programs. I was at the then Morgan Guaranty Trust Company at the time, first in the credit department, then in equity research, and then as a commercial banker before going to law school. And then most of my career was in finance, albeit the investment banking transaction side of the house, both in the US and Europe, where we had a lot of exposure to companies, markets, and as the firm at the time got into investment activities, some exposure to actually direct investing in private equity. So it's always an area I was interested in. I think you have just one thing which we'll get to, and I think is really sort of a sine qua non condition, precedent, predicate, whatever you want to say, to anybody who thinks about this business. You have to A, be interested in the broad subject matter, and B, just genuinely be some combination of intellectually curious and restless.
Great.
Great. Peter put me on his left side so that I could be close and he could control me. I went off the farm.
That shows you how naive I am, right?
I'm going to start actually with how I got into the business. When I was at Yale, one of the things I enjoyed doing was taking introductory courses. Not partly because it was easy, but it also gave me exposure to quite a few things. When I got to my senior year, I found I didn't have enough credits to qualify for any of the regular majors like economics or history and so forth. So I elected administrative science, which had the least number of requirements to get that major. But I pretty much have followed that through my life. I decided I'd do a number of different things. It started off with working at a law firm for 5 years. And then McKinsey and Company came along and offered me the opportunity to travel around the world and set up offices in the top 40 economies. So I spent 16 years doing that. And then I decided that at age 45 I should move on and do something else. And started looking around that was about in the 90s. And with the market crash and all of the dot-coms lying around, I thought I'd become an entrepreneur. But I ran into a fellow named Lonnie Steffens, who had spent his entire career at Merrill Lynch, somebody that was totally focused on investing. And I decided that as long as I was living in New York City, I should eventually get into the financial services area. So in 2001, we set up Spring Mountain Capital. Spring Mountain Capital really combines the talents of people who are unable to focus on any one particular thing. So what we do is we just look around for interesting.
When you talk about investing, there's still probably a long list of other types of investing that are not even represented here. But we're very fortunate to have a reasonably diverse group of folks here. Now, I obviously don't have much influence because I asked one question that no one answers, so I'll answer it, which is the entry points into the investing profession. And I think the answer is pretty much the same for all three of you, and that is, the one thing I think is important to note is that unlike consulting and some other professions where there are a large number of positions open for people coming directly from undergraduate or for business school, it's less true in the professions that these gentlemen are in that although it's true that there are some entry-level positions at low level, probably the majority of the positions are where you've done something else and then you're hired in. Right? So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be interested. It just means that you ought to be realistic in trying to plot your career path in terms of trying to enter into it. So that's that. The other thing, of course, is note that all three gentlemen have done a variety of things. So I guess the rule says that one might have 5 professions before you finish your career. So these guys are clearly working on the 5, right? Now let's go into our list of 5 questions, and I'm going to ask each one to really first step back away from their individual firms and their own career and just say, for the core part of what you're involved in, whether it's hedge funds or asset management or private equity, investing, where is the profession heading, good and bad? And the one thing that's true is that you can't pick up the paper without reading some story about someone trying to do something to the professions that you're in, whether it's changing the rules on tax or whatever it is. So perhaps if each of you could, make 1 or 2 comments about what's good and bad with regard to what's happening in your profession looking forward, right? Because these folks, their interesting careers, their careers are going to be in the future, not in the past. So it's important to understand where they're headed. David?
Well, today, in the private equity area and the buyouts, things are actually much better than they were a couple of years ago. You had quite a run in terms of the stock market, what that means for. So our investor base is a lot of endowments. It's also a lot of very large state public pension plans, sovereign wealth funds, and really what you're doing, you're investing the retirees' money, a portion of it in terms of achieving a return so that the pension plans can keep their promises to the retirees. So things have improved in terms of the stock market being up. There are very set allocations across the different types of investments, private equity being one of them. So as other asset classes go up, they have to rebalance, which means money's flowing towards the private equity firms today. Also, what's been happening, as you've been seeing all the IPOs that are going on, well, that's also translating through in terms of the selling of investments, the dividends being paid out of these companies. So a lot of cash going back to the investor, the pension funds, if you will. What all that's translating into is that you went through a very, very tight period where there was not a lot of liquidity. The private equity firms were calling capital to buy companies. And there wasn't a lot coming back. The stock market was down, so people were over allocated in private equity, made it a little tough. A lot of that has reversed now, and as Leon Black said about a year ago, selling everything is nailed down, given how easy the money is from the lending community. So those are all good things, in terms of the private equity firms. The trajectory that existed, let's say in 2006, 2007, you're not on that trajectory. This was like a moonshot. But what's happened is you come out of the valley. You're in a nice place at this point in time. But I don't think there's any huge expectations that you're going to see a proliferation of the very, very large funds. There will be some, but the view that you're going to have a proliferation of that, I don't think exists today. However, you're in a good place. Now, the other thing that's happened is that there are, to your point about how to access, let's say, our private equity firm, there's a bunch of different entry points. We're speaking to a number of alumni here, is that right?
No, these are students
and
alumni.
Okay, so you really got the entry level is for the undergraduate degree. Very, very few private equity firms, at least in the space I operate in, would recruit directly from an undergraduate degree. What would happen is that most of the firms that I know of here would be recruiting from investment banks and consulting firms. So basically, the undergraduate would have gone to an investment bank or a consulting firm, would put 2 or 3 years in there as in terms of an analyst, and then would then be recruited by a private equity firm such as myself. Now, look, there's 5,000 private equity firms out there that do all kinds of different things, and everybody, a lot of them have different approaches on this. So I'm only speaking for, let's say, the private equity firms that are the larger type, such as us. But generally, to my knowledge, this is how most of the firms do it. So then what you've got is someone who's got the 2 or 3 years of experience in investment banking or consulting. They come in as an associate level or analyst level, if you will, and they put 2 or 3 years in at the private equity firm. And then there are decisions made in terms of, some people are asked to stay, other people are go back to business school, other people move on to other things, which we'll get into, I think, in one of these later questions. But there are other entries. So a person that has gone into business school, let's say, would possibly come in at a higher level in our firm. And this person, the profile of this person would be that they've probably done their 2 or 3 years of investment banking. They've probably done 2 or 3 years of private equity. They've gone back to business school, 2 years there, and now we're hiring them in at the vice president level into the firm. But there's been an evolution in the private equity firms in terms of hiring other people too, with much broader experience. We also have what we call operating partners, and these are people that have a combination or some combination of consulting and operating experience in terms of running businesses. You're very selective in terms of how you do this. These people are brought on board not so much to identify new investment opportunities, but basically to work on the investments that you've made to create value, to improve the operation, work with the management teams to improve it. So, the result is we have a number of what we call operating partners in our firm, and they've all got decades of experience in terms of other things, running businesses, running divisions, consulting backgrounds, CFO.
So if you want to do that, you have to be a CEO and then move over to it, right?
That's
a less typical in terms of.
Well, it is a path, and it is something that all the private equity firms are very focused on today, and it is quite much more significant today than it was, say, 5 years ago.
Ruben?
Sure, just so maybe a default to a sort of a level, sort of more macro level than David's comments related to private equity, with which I completely agree with his characterization of the industry based on what we see as investors. First of all, I think the overall investment management business is a phenomenal business. if you consider the range of asset classes and categories and problem sets to which it applies. And it's going to have a pretty robust future, albeit subject to all sorts of winds of competition, technological change, regulation, and everything, things we can't even anticipate in the years to come. Why do I think it's a great business? Demographics are our friend. It's not just people getting older like a couple of us at this head table. It's around the world. It's demographics, sort of aging of populations, and also the rise of the middle class around the world. In China, David referred to sovereign wealth funds. China has $3 trillion. The Gulf, there's trillions of dollars. Scandinavia, pension funds that in the U.S. Have a responsibility to invest for generations as yet unborn of future state and public officials, and those pools will continue to grow over time. Secondly, the business is increasingly globalized. Investors are global, investment opportunities are global, markets are global, all of which, if nothing else, provides incredibly fertile sort of intellectual ground for exploration, and also opportunity sets for finding interesting, unique, value-added investment opportunities. Finally, and this is a plus and a minus in terms of the opportunity set, but structurally, I'd say the business has become increasingly institutionalized. Part of that's competition. Part of that's the basic cost structure required, given technology change and the needs to have a sophisticated trading system, reporting, compliance, analytics, all that kind of thing. And then there's the necessary issues associated with regulation, compliance, best practices, et cetera. So it's increasingly hard to go out. It was a lot easier when each of us were starting our careers to go out and start a little boutique-y firm, but the nut one needs to do that, this is, again, I have mixed feelings saying this or how I really feel about it. It's a little bigger nut, and you have to go with your eyes wide open. I would never discourage anybody from taking a totally entrepreneurial view of the business, of their own model, their own approach, and there are always going to be people who succeed in that regard. But as the business has become more complicated, more global, more technology-based, it's a fact. It's harder to do that. Final factor on technology. I mean, every day we both, thank the world in which we live for the benefits of technology, but also struggle with the frustrations born of technology. Not just on an operating basis, day in and day out, but as an investor, there's an infinite variety of information out there that's basically accessible right here to all of us in this room. How do you capture it, process it, sift it in an intelligent way, prioritize it, and make sense of it? Like, those are kind of the big sort of trends in the investment world overall that we see that affect all aspects of our business. And I think if you go into any one of the subcategories at varying levels, these factors would bear upon how someone thinks about the business today is responsible for steering that business forward.
Yeah, and I'll make two comments related to what you said. One is, on the positive side, when you think about it, money has to find a home. And a pension assets grow regardless of if there's a recession or not recession. So on the positive side, for the money managers, there's a constant inflow of cash that needs to be invested, whether there's a recession or not. The negative, though, is that there's a lot of scrutiny and a lot of competition and a lot of about returns and so forth, and so they get repeatedly reported on a very regular basis. So there's a lot of pressure with regard to performance that probably was a little lighter, I guess, 20 years ago. Greg, now the hedge fund business has gotten a lot of very positive press, right? And so forth. And in particular, I guess one is just there's been a lot of press on just how some of the hedge fund guys are not necessarily earning the same kind of returns that that the general market is. Go ahead.
I think just in terms of the overall industry, I agree with both the gentlemen to my right, David Ruben, in terms of the opportunity, the industry there's an amazing amount of money to be deployed. And there are an amazing number of opportunities out there because of just the cycle that we're in. The recovery, the U.S. isn't there yet. Europe has yet to experience its renaissance and regrowth. So we're seeing tons of opportunity and there's tons of money. So this would be obviously a wonderful time to enter the business. At the same time, one could say it's a dynamite period, but dynamite oftentimes has two connotations. Namely, when you have just a ton of money under a lot of pressure to be deployed, to earn a return, with the attraction of many, many people in the business to compete, to put that money to work or have it taken back from them, somebody will eventually mess it up. And so I think the good side and the bad side is always there. What we're really worried about is if I were in your shoes versus mine today or ours today, where we have the money, we're deploying it into investments. You have to think about when you enter the particular industry that you enter, whether it's in private equity or hedge funds, and there are periods of time that are very good and times that are very bad. If I take a look at, for example, long-short equity on the hedge fund side, a few years ago we could have easily said, let's not do it because of where the market is. But when we took a look at the liquidity and the fact that you're in nothing on the fixed income side, we saw quite a large amount of money that would flow into the business, and virtually anyone who was in the equity side would outperform. And in fact, that's what happened. In the hedge fund side, we saw individuals outperform even last year's market that produced 30% returns. We have a slew of managers that are looking at 40, 50, 60% type returns. Extraordinarily good stock pickers. So anyway, we see opportunities, and we see, unfortunately, a ton of money coming in, a ton of people being pressured to deploy it, and eventually, if one just studies history of investing, it eventually, someone messes it up and overbids on the assets and it becomes tumbling down. So I think that's what we have to all be very aware of.
Now, the one thing I want to emphasize is that it's really triggered by what you said, which is beware of fads. And the classic case of, I went to business school at Harvard, and the classic thing was that the graduate class always chased yesterday's fad. And you could always tell sort of when an industry had peaked when you saw a whole bunch of MBAs go after it, right? But I think the same is true for undergraduates as well. So the one thing you should really ask yourself and take advantage of the alumni network and so forth. People are very generous with their time. If you connect with them and call them, is look ahead and look at where they really are. Because the classic case are people getting into venture capital right when it's peaked, or going into LBOs at the peak and so forth. So that's the one thing, is really look through to see what truly is happening. That's part of the reason for this panel. I'd like to switch from the macro to more on an individual basis and just say, let's face it, people are different, and the kind of people who succeed in different professions are quite different, right? I've been in consulting, venture and investment banking. I will tell you that the people who are suited for those professions, there are a certain set of characteristics, and there's some people who just, no matter how much they might love being in investment banking, are just terrible, right? So I'm going to ask, in no particular order, any of the panelists here to say, having observed people in your profession succeed and not succeed, what generalizations can you make about the characteristics that you've seen for people who've tended to be successful, but also people who you say, please don't pursue it because that type of personality or that kind of skill set just doesn't work in this profession? And I'm not requiring all of you to answer, but if you have any comment.
We'll start it off on this side.
Or no, whoever wishes to speak,
Yeah.
no particular order.
I thought about it. I like this question, and I like in the context of when we've hired. We have 2 professors in our group. One who teaches financial mathematics at Drexel, and one who teaches accounting at Fordham Business School. We also have an investment banker and a private equity, lifetime private equity individual, and so forth. So we have a diversified group, and I thought about what is the common thread that holds us together. And there are several. There's number one, you have to like investing. You have to like investing. When you get up in the morning, you just want to pick up the Wall Street Journal, devour it. You want to listen to any tidbit of news I'll give you an edge. Even before you go to sleep, you're finding out what's happened in the market. If you do not love investing, this is not a business for you. Secondly, it might not be politically correct, you have to enjoy making money without guilt. And that doesn't mean that you lose your morals or your dedication to society or whatever else. But you have to enjoy making money. Right? You can't compromise it as your secondary and this, that. So I find those 2 characteristics are very important in what we do. I've counseled out younger people who don't get up naturally. They'll read the New York Times before they read the Wall Street Journal. If you don't live and breathe investments, I don't think you'll be amazingly successful in this business. Any of you?
Sure, but I couldn't agree with you more that you really have to love the business. And I would underscore again something I said earlier, that just being really curious matters. I go with my senior investment professionals around the world. We're in China not too long ago, and we had a free couple hours late one afternoon, and someone wanted to take us up to the Great Wall, and I raised my hand and said, "That's great, yeah." My colleagues said, "Let's go." Sorry, we're going to go check out the Yum Brands operations in Beijing and count, patrons. That's the kind of curiosity and dedication you really need to be a good investor. Secondly, you need to be very disciplined. I mean, and that's true in life, professional success generally, in large measure. But disciplined, not just in the sense you got to show up at work every day and do your job, but you have to be disciplined when it comes to your analytics and marrying your analytics with your value expectations and your price points. You could be really right about a stock or a private equity opportunity or a long short bet, but if you're wrong in the timing or the price, forget about it. Thirdly, and here I would disagree a little bit with Greg. There I think it takes, people I've met and dealt with who are highly successful investors over the years, they're the single-minded, read the Wall Street Journal types too. That's certainly an approach, but also people who have a broader view of the world. I don't think anybody would look at a guy like Warren Buffett and say he was, all about getting up in the morning and doing accounting spreadsheets or looking at his Bloomberg. He does all that too, but this is a broad gauge person, and that breadth of aperture has come through a long career of success and experience, et cetera. So in fact, I would say, as someone who's thinking about coming to the business at the junior to mid-career levels, while the pressure is inexorably to focus, start with the Wall Street Journal, the market, spend all your time on Bloomberg, I would work hard as part of the discipline of becoming a good broad-gauge investor for the long term, of keeping a wide view at the same time and maintaining exposure to other aspects of the world which bear upon in the investing environment over the long term.
Actually, I
Or you get
totally
blindsided
agree with that.
Yeah. Or you get blindsided, right?
Yeah, totally agree. You really have to have a broad view, and I think you also have to try to surround yourself with people who will enable you to have that broad view of the world.
And in part because, as you said, investing has become so global, so everything is
Exactly.
connected. So if you don't know what's going on in emerging markets, so forth, you're going to miss something, right?
So in our firm, you're basically the task is that you have to have good initiative. You've got to have a basically very proactive, very outgoing. You have to have the ability and willingness to make decisions when there's a lot of uncertainty, because you're in control of the business, and sometimes you have to make those decisions without really having all the facts you'd like to have. You have to be good with numbers. It's very numerate, so you need to be comfortable with the financial statements and numbers in general. You'll spend a lot of time in that. And after all these years, I got to say that you got to be lucky. You just really have to be lucky. And there are some people that just seem to have that, and it plays out well for them. So, but it's all of those.
I want to make one distinction across these three gentlemen, and that is that there's a difference, for example, between doing leveraged buyouts and investing in public securities in this sense. When David makes an investment, he can't say, well, I don't like that position, so I'll sell it this afternoon, right? He's got to take a long view, which is very different when you're investing in tradable securities and so forth. And some people are good at one, and some people are not. I remember when I was at Lehman Brothers, there's a good friend of mine who was on the trading side, and he said, my attention span is starting to intersect with my 6-month-old, right? In terms of how, he says, and it was true, because he's got to make decisions like this in life. He himself would say, I'd be terrible at making an investment where I got to own the company for 5 years, right? But he realized that, so he said, I'm never going to go there. So one of the distinctions you made is think about that in terms of how you view the world and your attention span and so forth. You got to be pretty patient if you're going to buy a company, because you could be in it for a while. Right?
That's correct. Absolutely correct.
One other thing, the people who tend not to end up happy, are there any characteristics that you can see, the typical reasons why people ended up either not being successful or they might be good, but they're just not happy, right? Because remember, there's a distinction between whether you're good and whether you're happy, right? It's certainly true in my profession, right? Some people are very good, but they're just unhappy, and they're for a different set of reasons, right? Any comments about that? I suspect in all cases, you don't have people 100% stayed and were happy and stayed forever, right?
I think most people who end up staying in the business are happy. And it goes around, you go to the characteristics, which I also should mention, you have to like to compete and win. And if you don't compete and you don't win, I don't think you can really be happy in this. And so,
The people who leave, typically, why?
Well, they didn't like investments, right? They felt guilt about making money, or they didn't perform well. And sometimes, I think to one of the points that Dave mentioned, there are, if you're in this business for a while, you realize that luck is a humongous factor. So you can be bright, you can work hard, and you can still fail. Right? And it's not your fault, but when that happens, you're going to be unhappy. Just going to be unhappy because there's just nothing you can do about it, but you will fail. The second thing is you can work as hard as you want. You can be totally responsible on every investment, look at every investment every which way, and still miss something. It's a humbling area, because what you find is that the number of things that you don't know are just an incredible universe of things. And when you take a look at the reasons for failure, right, it's not that you didn't do something right. The reasons for failure are risks that you could not see, even as hard as you try. And that makes you really unhappy, because once again, you don't really control a lot of the outcome.
Yeah, so for us, there's a break point in terms of if you're going to be in this business for the long haul. You start out, you're sort of a processor. And some people do that very, very well. But you have to be able to make that move to the next step in terms of the bigger picture, the ability, that high energy, lots of initiative, proactive, outgoing, if you're going to be able to generate investment ideas and generate actionable investment opportunities. And that ultimately is what makes you successful in the long haul. And there are a lot of people that can't make that transition from processor to basically deal originator and deal creator.
I would just say, I think it was Napoleon who said that there are a lot of good generals out there, but I'll take the lucky ones. And I couldn't underscore enough the importance of luck in life, to be sure, but in the investments as one aspect of professional life. I think another element, though, of the business, it's a variation on Greg's comment about the money aspects, the rate of the return creation aspects of the business. One has to feel, I think everyone at this table feels, an acute sense of responsibility in managing money, because in almost all cases, you're managing somebody else's money, and they're entrusting that with you to basically invest it responsibly and grow it over the long term. Because at the end of the day, they're real people. There are moms and dads out there, there are people around the world who are kind of counting on us to do the right thing on their behalf relatively consistently over a long time. So when I come to work every day, and a lot of my colleagues, we're really animated by one thing which scares the daylights out of us, the other hand, it inspires us, the responsibility as fiduciaries and investment advisors and managers that goes with managing large pools of capital across a variety of categories.
Now, what I'd like to do is to make sure we have time for questions from the audience. And what we'll try to do is sort of rotate by venue. So first of all, I see there are a bunch of folks in New Haven. And I don't know if Denise is still there. I think Denise had to leave at a certain time. But perhaps, is there someone at Yale who'd like to raise their hand and come up to the mic and ask a question? Okay, someone has their hand. Please come up and come to the mic. Mention your name and then ask your question. Can we hear? We cannot, I'm not sure we can hear you.
Switch.
Yeah, whoever is the AV person there might want to check to see the sound, because we can't hear anyone on that side. So why don't we start with someone here? Anyone? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Peter Anderson. I'm here not because I'm thinking to go into your field, but I am always interested in learning. And we started out macro, and then it sort of became more micro. To get further micro, I'm wondering if you could tell us if it's possible to generalize what a typical day is like in carrying out your job responsibilities, including when the day begins, when the day ends, what goes on in between, and how closely does it resemble any of the scenes from The Wolf of Wall Street?
You don't have to answer in that order.
Well, it's not really, at my level, that's what I do. I'm in charge of problems and quality control primarily. I get in very early, and I make myself very accessible.
How early is early?
I'm usually at my desk 7:15, 7 or so like that. Okay. And then I'll typically stay a little bit later because that's when the problems wander in. Either first thing in the morning because they've been thinking about a problem all night, or something's erupted during the day and they've been trying to put the fire out, and now I get it handed to me late in the day. My day, it's really not fair for me to really describe my day because I'm really across the firm in terms of where are the issues, where are the problems, where are the opportunities, and that's what I'm dealing with. So I can't really describe, a routine.
Because yours is more of the oversight.
Yeah. So, but for our younger people, they're going to be, which is really something I can relate to here, is that they are, they're on a team. They're probably working on a number of projects, maybe as many as 5 to 7 projects in terms of investment opportunities that we're at different stages of exploring what we might do there. And they will be part of the team. They'll be crunching numbers. The young people will be crunching all the numbers based on interacting with the more senior people on the team. And so they're processing, and then the more senior people have to basically oversee that activity, as well as thinking about where the next new opportunity is going to come from, as well as handling the oversight of companies that we control.
And then are they producing reports then that get sort of,
Yeah. So an investment idea will start every Monday morning. So here's the way it works. I mean, basically every Monday morning, the whole firm gets together and we talk about all the opportunities that we're looking at. If there's an opportunity that people want to talk about, then the team, and generally this will be overseen by, but produced by some of the younger members of the team, a 1 or 2 page memo that basically walks through why do we want to. Here's the opportunity. Why do we think it makes sense for us to own this? Then from that point on, if we decide to pursue it, then you begin a constant update in terms of the due diligence that's being done, and there's will be every week or 2 weeks there'll be reports on that as we're answering the questions and issues that have been raised in that meeting. So that's really the communication that's going on in the firm. Very broad-based communication. There's no silos. So if you're a young analyst and you actually have the time to read everything that's distributed, you can pretty much know what's going on in the firm across all the verticals. But most of them don't have the time to read all that, plus do their own work. So
Either Ruben or Greg want to address that question, Bill?
I think it's we're probably very common. Where if you're trying to develop associates, you want them to learn how to source ideas, and so our associates will listen to 2 or 3 pitches per day. You want them to understand the parts of the entire process, and so we'll have a meeting with the entire group assembled to find out what are the things that need to be done in order to decide on the investment, take a look at what the pipeline looks like. You want them to understand bits of marketing. So, we put together investor presentation packages that requires assembling of charts, ways to explain what we do to people, to see if there's to be able to explain the basis on which we make an investment, what the return stream might look like. And then you want all of your associates to keep on adding to their knowledge base. As was pointed out earlier, there is so much information going on, so much of a need to keep up. It's changing so rapidly, so we'd like our associates to spend a couple hours a day just reading anything.
Yeah, I think routine day-to-day is not dissimilar from David's or Greg's in the sort of a management perspective. 2 things I would add in terms of the routine of the business. Every day, all of our investment professionals meet at 8:30 in the morning. Most of them have been at the firm since considerably before then, because at 8:30 we're looking at markets around the world, we're looking at big opportunities, things that are in our portfolios, things that might go in, and we go around the room, and anybody in the company who wants to go to that meeting can go to that meeting and speak. So if you have something to say, you got to be prepared and to defend your position. Second, in terms of formal process, we have, over the course of the day, the analysts, investors, the traders, they're all doing what they do. And there's a heavy component of independent research, but there's also a lot of collaboration and batting around ideas, both formally and informally. Formally, when someone has a good investment idea, which we encourage and monitor, it's like defending an important paper in college, or it's a very Socratic, disciplined process where you do the work, you come up with the analysis, and you sit there in front of a mixed demographic, a demographic cut by any number, any category you want to, of your colleagues and professional peers and have to defend that against significant stress testing from people who are in a position to have some experience that bears upon what you're proposing. And we do that both, obviously, to come up with, separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, in terms of investment ideas, but also as a formative matter. I mean, it's tremendously beneficial to those who present to have that experience at all stages of their career. Even the top guys, although they have some ability to put their thumb on the scale, have to go through the same process and withstand the same scrutiny for years.
Now, I want to point out something, having had different careers myself. Please note that it's very analytical, it's meetings, it's reading reports, so forth. If you're that kind of person, these professions might be good. But I know people who basically say, if I'm not making a physical product, I can't be happy, or various other things. So that's one of the things you need to think about yourself. Now, these gentlemen here, they love, because that comes naturally to them, right? They think of investments and so forth, but they don't, to pick that one example, none of them obviously had a need to make a physical product, right? They don't mind investing in a company that makes a physical product. So that's one of the things, these are the kinds of distinctions you ought to ask yourself as far as, what you really love to do or not. Now, I don't know if we've repaired the sound problem to Yale. This happened last time, so it's happened again. Can someone say something in New Haven and see whether we can hear you?
Okay,
we can. So here's what I would like is if anyone has a question from New Haven, sadly, this happened last time as well, please email the question to me. It'll come right up my screen. Please email it to yalecareerpanels@gmail.com. So please send if you have a question, please email it. I have one here that was emailed from someone who is on the streaming video, from Meng Lee. And the question is, do career changers mainly enter the investment field through connections, or are there some other mechanisms by which people enter that profession? What's the mechanism for connecting with either private equity or investing or hedge funds or so forth? And you all three, if you don't have an answer, if someone has an answer that they'd like to pose.
Yeah, maybe I start. I'd say, networking in any profession obviously, makes a difference, and it's a question of taking the initiative and working the Yale Career Service and your friends and contacts, etc. But there's also a formal process by which many people get in the investment business. In business schools, and then there's training areas, certified financial planner exams, certified financial analysis. There are a lot of kind of hardcore analytic steps one could take in terms of building one's resume and skill sets that's the best way to create the circumstances where you can get lucky.
What I would say when people ask me to look back at the 2008 era, what kept us from going under, I would say basically it was diversification. Since on one hand you know that there's nothing you can do to affect your luck, it will come and go, and it can be devastatingly bad when coupled with all the things that you don't know. Your best protection is diversification. So even though we love things dearly, an area that seems to be in vogue, and investment, and we've analyzed it every which way and we think this is it, we will never commit a large portion of our money to it. And I think in the investing business, there's always a yin and yang, positive and negative. As a matter of fact, it's a constant balance between vision and optimism and skepticism. What I really like is two partners that I work with. Well, one had a little plaque in his office that said, I never met a rich pessimist. Be optimistic. The other guy had a plaque that said, pessimist, somebody who funded an optimist. and so you really have to just maintain that balance. And they were just next to each other and working in that mixture. That mixture actually created a very interesting bond that produced a stream of returns that was very, very positive. When I was at McKinsey from 82 to 98, we didn't experience a single down year through that period. And in 2000, we didn't experience a down year either. 2008 was the first down year in the history of the firm in terms of the fully diversified portfolio. So you ask, what can protect you? What can protect you with your clients? I think it's diversification. I'm sure Ruben would second that in terms of how you
Well, number one, really.
So I'd like to end with a saying and a story, right? And the saying that I think I mentioned to the panelists before is, and maybe was why coming to this career panel is very useful, is there's a good friend of mine who said there's only one thing better than learning from your mistakes, and that is learning from the mistakes of other people, right? And I think that's definitely true, and part of what you should do is, you're going to make mistakes, but try not, if you can avoid mistakes by listening to other people, that's a good thing. The other is really is connect back to what Greg said, which is you have to have a passion for whatever you want to do, because it still can work, but it's much harder. And I'll tell you one story. When I was at Harvard Business School, and I was in Section H, and there was one guy, his name was Ron Shake, and we just could not keep him in the classroom. And when people go out trying to find him, to drag him back, because we all liked him, we didn't want him to flunk, right? And we'd always find Ron. He would be in front of some delicatessen or some pastry shop or whatever, watching the people come in and out and so forth, and he was just fascinated with that kind of business, the food. Now, you may not know Ron Shakes by name, but he founded Au Bon Pain, and then he founded Panera Bread, right? And this guy, I will tell you, I think he was reasonably good at numbers, but, there's no question, right? I remember in our first year, we all said, Ron is going to be the wealthiest person of the people in this section. And we don't know whether that's actually true, but he did obviously do quite well. But he had a tremendous passion. He did not get the best grades at Harvard Business School, and we managed to drag him back to class regularly so that he would actually graduate. But we knew that this is a guy, we knew what he wanted to do, we knew what he loved, and he was just superb at it. So I really like to end with that story, because I hope all of you end up with the thing that you really, really love, and with the recognition, as in the case of Ron, is he knew what he was good at and he knew what he was not good at. But he knew what he really loved. So hopefully you can line those things up between both what you're good at, but also what you have a passion for, right? And that it fits also with your other priorities in life, whether it's hours you want to work, right? Or where you want to, physically be located, or your personal life. So with that, I really want to thank the panelists who did a terrific job, and I hope all of you will join me in thanking the panelists, who I think really were pretty balanced about their view about the profession.
Who's become an employee or a member of our firm came through a reference from someone on the team. Very rarely will we go outside to a headhunter to find that. We need to have individuals who we totally trust from day one, and we have certain proven characteristics. I think just getting back to things, I've always recommended, or I've always told people that have served summer internships with us, that we will not give them an offer at the end of the summer internship. That we want them to go to a large firm, get their experience, build their networks, and understand who their competition, good and bad, might look like. Because there you're competing with people throughout the world. And building your networks is probably the most important thing to getting into the business.
Now, I can hear sound coming from the room at Lindsay Chittens, so I think the sound has come back. Is anyone there would like to pose a question?
Is it working?
Yes.
We can hear you now. Sounds great.
Okay. Great. You guys spoke a little about like mature segments of the investment management market. Are there any like blatant examples of segments that came to maturity in the past decade, for example? Has there been like huge flows of money into one segment and then like a corresponding like kind of a stop or a drying up of those funds? And also a quick little follow-up, just if each of you guys could say like a book that has had a profound impact on your view of the investment management field, that would be great.
Well, in terms of private equity, there's been a huge inflow over the last decade in terms of money
Too much?
Too much.
Do you
Yes.
think? Okay.
Yes, too much probably. There were some concerns, I think, in 2010, 2011, that was going to shrink. I think it did probably for a short period of time. And now, again, there's a lot of liquidity back into the market, and a lot of the funds that were struggling to raise money 2 years ago are able to really hit their targets. So, the money continues to flow, and it's really driven by the fact that the pension liabilities are so significant, and so the people that manage those pension funds, they need to seek out some higher return investment activities and in a balanced way, obviously, so that they can fulfill the obligations and avoid having to go back and increase contributions by the employees.
I'll just comment on books, and I'd start right in New Haven. There are two Yale-based students of the investment world. They're each written books, number of books, who are respected and really at the top of their fields. Charlie Ellis, who's a lifelong student of the investment management business across asset classes. I tend to devour just about anything Charlie writes. He's wise beyond his years of extended experience. Similarly, David Swenson would be well known to all of you. I mean, really, he kind of invented the genre of diversified, portfolio, endowment style investing. And there are others, and everybody has some, but I mean, right in your own backyard, you have the opportunity to take courses or go to lectures from either of those two individuals or their colleagues. I would run, not walk, to do so if you're interested in the field.
I would second that. And in David's books, I'd read his first book, which seems more institutionally oriented than personally oriented, but it's a wonderful book that I think was just reissued in the second edition. That really is a wonderful, wonderful book to read. I'd also read the reports from the Yale Endowment Fund. They give you some very good insights into the thoughts of how to organize a portfolio, a rational portfolio. In addition to Charlie Ellis's books.
Yeah, and Charlie's a terrific, I've known him for a long time, but he's really terrific, as we would say. One of the things I would, though, suggest to people is that when things look too good to be true, they often are. And I think that some of the stories about some parts of the investment side really seem, in a sense, to be too good to be true. So I think I just suggest that you really try to use your intelligence and common sense to really see through and see whether or not, in fact, things are sustainable. That's why I thought it was a very good question coming from the gentleman in New Haven, because the reality is sometimes things get overheated, and too many people get into the pool, and then it's bad for everyone, right? So that's really something to focus on. Let me see if there are any other. Oh, there's a question here. Go ahead. But tell us your name.
Yes, Daniel Wang. I'm a graduate in 2008. I work at BlackRock, and I do institutional sales. I have a quick question for all three of you, Pierre included. It's fascinating that all of you talked about being luck in this industry, which I resonate because I joined 2008, and it's very interesting for me to learn about the industry. But I was curious, given all of your so many years of experience behind you, what would you say are a few of the good ways to increase or maximize your luck, if any. I appreciate that.
We can't tell you that.
Very good question. I'm going to take notes when I say this.
You know, it's, well, look, you try to, I guess the first thing somebody mentioned it here earlier about being overly confident in it's the things that it's not the things that you don't know that get you, it's the things that you know for sure that aren't true. So what you really try to do is learn from your prior experiences, build on that, create, so you need to keep your experienced people, whether they're successful, they've made some mistakes. If you've never made a mistake, you may not know what to look for. And really then make sure you create a process around what you've learned so that you try to avoid that. You still won't avoid problems. You still will miss great opportunities. But if you keep working at it, you should get better. Your hit rate in terms of upside opportunities should outweigh what's happening on the other side. But unfortunately, there's no magic silver bullet.